the World Healing Tour movement with your host, Noah Crane. Heal yourself, heal the world.
Action!
Hello. Welcome to the World Healing Tour podcast, where our mission is to help you heal yourself so you can heal the world. Hello, my name is Noah Crane. Each week, we will bring you tips and tools and inspire you to live your most empowered and joy-filled life. I'm also the author of the book, The Grass is Greenest Where I Am. Because the grass is greenest where you are when you're able to live in your own love and light and share your unique gifts with the world. When you're able to live in a place of no comparison, no competition, and no scarcity, but truly believe in yourself. But to be honest, for a long time, I struggled. I did not love myself. I did not believe in myself. I felt like I was unworthy, like I wasn't good enough, and my life was full of fears. I had to learn to love myself, to accept myself by doing the inner work, by starting to peel those layers of fear away from me and learn to forgive myself, learn to accept myself just the way I was, and most of all, stop rejecting myself, right? How often do we reject ourselves? And that's why it's the World Healing Tour, because when we heal ourselves, we can help others heal as well on the journey. And we're able to step into our own purpose in life so we can help others, passion and purpose, because that's what we're here to do. Once I was able to do those things, I was able to write my book, find my soulmate, and do so many great things that I never thought I could do before and be here with you. So that's a complete something that I've been able to do from all my self-work. And I want that for you too. That's why we bring incredible people each week to pour into yourself and into your life. And I'm really excited about my guest today. Here we got Martin Castellanos, retired from the Boca Raton Police Department after 20 years, and retired from the United States Coastal Guard after 27 years of reserve and active duty. 34 years of continuous law enforcement service. He's now a professional speaker and trainer. Marty created an educational seminar titled Scared to Prepared. Marty, welcome to the World Healing Tour podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, so great to have you. And I love all that law enforcement and all these years. What made you so passionate to be in law enforcement for so long?
Thanks for asking. My father was my first role model. He was my first hero, and he introduced me to heroes in literature, in scripture, in mythology, even in comic books. And all the while, he was very humble to not make himself a hero. But he was a police officer part-time in the New York Police Auxiliary. He was a federal agent in South America back in our country before we immigrated. And I found out those things about him later on. And my father grew to be one of my heroes, not just somebody teaching me about it. And I wanted to be what he was. He was generous. He was kind. He was a protector. He was an advisor. He was there spiritually for the people, his loved ones. And it was just a whole package, and it was something I wanted to grow up to be.
I love that so much. So at what age did you learn that about your father?
I didn't know he was a cop until I was in high school, but he was that solid role model later on. The police auxiliary in New York was a part-time responsibility. It wasn't every day. He was a building super most of the time. So he was a handyman, electrician, a painter, doing repairs. But once a month, he would put on a police uniform and shaving in the mirror while I sat on the edge of the bathtub reading the Sunday funnies, and he would explain who Superman was, and he would explain Sherlock Holmes, and he would explain, some Samson and stuff and like that in the Bible. And it was just really neat. It was really neat.
Wow, what a great dad to grow up with, right?
Yeah.
What a gift you had in your life.
It was. While he was with us, it was a treasure. And, there was a time that I didn't appreciate it, but I had a time to circle back and make peace with him when I was older. Because, when young boys get stubborn right around 19 and we become difficult. I was able to grow past that, and he was a big part of my life until he passed.
It's beautiful when we learn to appreciate people that we take for granted, right?
Right.
It's such a learning curve for all of us to become, who we are and to be able to appreciate the people along the journey that have really poured into us and have done so much. So I love that.
Right, and you miss them.
Yeah.
And then missing that teaches you something. And just the fact that I made that error, it gives me something to teach from as well.
Yeah, that's really special and really beautiful that you had that kind of guidance. And
Right.
so, have you always been interested? So, your dad kind of showed you the path to that,
Right.
and but you went much more full time into it than your dad did.
Right, right. I knew I didn't want to. Well, at the time,
Mhm.
approaching the end of high school, I wasn't excited about a college degree. I wasn't excited about a business or medicine or something like that, which is what he wanted for me. He brought us to the United States for more opportunities, and he assumed that I would go to college and become a businessman or a doctor or an engineer or something like that. And it just really didn't strike. It didn't strike a chord in me. It wasn't a passion. My passion was being a protector and being something for the community.
Yeah, I love that. Where do you think that came from? Is that from your dad to feel to be a protector, or did you see things around you that made you like, I need to be a protector? Like, where did that come
My
from?
dad steered me towards, like I said, like the role models in history and literature and
Hmm.
scripture, even comic books, and it made me want to emulate them. And it might be a little childish to kind of
What
one
kind
up
of
and
role models?
the role models were the heroes, the
Yeah, which ones
protectors.
would can you like tell us some of them?
Well, sure, sure. Like the like Sherlock Holmes,
Uh-huh.
somebody who solves mysteries to make sure that justice is served. Batman, Superman, the heroes like that. David and Goliath,
Mm.
Samson in the Bible, things like that, and the things that got more spiritual or more related to the Catholic faith. My family was very devout Catholics, and it just all kind of all blended together. Catholic school is very regimented, and I'd like to say that that prepared me for the military. So that was actually kind of pretty funny. So
So what age
it,
are you when you go into the military?
I was 18. I joined the United States Coast Guard when I was 18, and I was there was an early enlistment opportunity because my grades were good enough. My grades were good enough because my parents worked two jobs each to keep us in a good Catholic school. So I had the academics for it, and I was able to enlist early. And throughout senior year of high school, I was working rescue one weekend a month here in the Fort Lauderdale area. So that was really neat. And then I joined the Coast Guard for law enforcement experience so that I could be a police officer in my community. Once I got to see what that was, when I saw a little bit of it, my father doing it, the men and women that did it full time became my heroes in my community. I got to see that. So it was a real honor to be one of those things, one of those people, and to be recognized for my time there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That must give you a lot of satisfaction.
It
Yeah.
does. And I was able to be, I laugh and say I was two flavors of law enforcement. I was law enforcement on the federal side with the United States Coast Guard. And we worked recreational boating safety and patrol, and that led to counter narcotics and some really exciting adventures. We got to guard space shuttles for the launches while they were still in service. That was amazing. Traveling the world gave me an appreciation for what we have in this country. To come back, it was neat to see cultures and music, food, language, but to come back home and appreciate, like you said, what not take those things for granted.
Yeah,
That
and they
was
say
really,
there's no place like home, right?
no, there's nothing really like home. It's really neat to experience the world, and I think it's important. I think that's what what diplomacy is based on, which so we're not going to war or to violence first, of course, but yeah, communication. Just sometimes when people are personalized, it's much harder to be hateful or violent.
Oh, I love what you just said. Can you say it?
So
Can you say?
when you see people as a person, when you see other people, whether they're different from you, especially when you see them as a person, it's much harder to be hateful or violent to them.
I love that because I think that's the problem.
It
We
is.
don't see people as same feelings as us, same emotions of us,
Right.
same, family love like we have. We don't really understand the pain we inflict on other people
Right.
because we're so caught up in our own issues, our own problem, what we want, how we want it, where we are ready to bulldozer over other people to get it.
Right, exactly right. And unfortunately, we live in a political world, and sometimes if I'm afraid of you, if the stark differences between us are something that makes me fear you or hate you, someone benefits from it. Somebody gets votes or money or something like that. So it's about not being played and making your own decision about the people around you and the people that get along with. Can we absolutely love everybody? I don't know if it's entirely possible, but we can be civilized. We can be kind. We can be generous, or and
Have
we can have
compassion, right?
compassion for people. We're exactly right. Exactly right.
Why is there so much dark in the world? Because there, like you said, we we want to love everybody, but the thing is, there's some people that are really evil and have evil intentions.
There are.
And I know, being a police officer, you must have seen a lot of the dark and a lot of the light. What is it that you think drives so much darkness in the world?
I've seen greed motivate people to commit crime. I've seen desperation to motivate people to commit crime. Sometimes ambitions, which kind of leads back to greed. I've seen people who are unwell or unhealthy, and they don't know that they're hurting other people. And those are the people that we have to be the most gentle with in enforcement. There was a demographic of mental health, or even the elderly, here in Boca Raton. And while I was a police officer, a big part of our focus, the priority for the education that we got in service during our service, was to recognize people in crisis, and recognize people who had some kind of mental shortcomings, and whenever possible, we would be patient and gentle with them. And the county started a CIT model, which was recognizing something that had been done in other states, and it was officers specially trained to recognize somebody in crisis and not default to arresting them. If it's a minor offense, or if it's not an offense at all, instead of trying to find an offense that fits what they did to take them to jail and solve the problem, take some time and spend some time with them and see what resources we could find for them. So a lot of people don't realize how much social work goes into modern law enforcement. And for better or worse, that's kind of become a big part of the job. So if we could get somebody to a shelter, we would make those arrangements. If there was a charity that had emergency funds, if there was people that donated clothing, counseling, houses of worship were really good for that, because a big part of ministry is counseling. So somebody can talk to a minister of any denomination or any faith, and maybe kind of deal with their rage or their pain or their sadness, and get up out of the gloom that they're in, or the financial situation that they're in. Everybody has the potential to be a good person, but we're flawed, and so the world is flawed.
And we self-sabotage a lot, you know?
We do, yeah.
We get in our
We
own
certainly
way,
can.
yeah.
We get in our own way. We might overthink something. We might not take a risk because we're afraid to fail. But the world is risk. If you want to be totally safe, live in a bank vault, never come out. That's unrealistic. That's the guarantee that you'll be totally safe, and then nobody can hurt you. But then, you got to order pizza every once in a while or something like that. You step out into the world, you step out into
the unknown.
And it's not all chaos. It's not all evil. It's not all crime. And that's kind of what makes us, keeps us. You keep your happiness in your life without ignoring. You don't want to be in denial for risk and danger. And that's why when I reached the end of my career, I started my training business to share self-defense education with people.
Yeah, I love
so
that,
that
and we're definitely going to talk about that. So we're talking, how important is it to be aware when you're out in the world? Because
it's very important. It's
Yeah.
absolutely about you. I'm guessing here, but I've studied the work of a lot of experts, and you could say 90% of the violent crime in this country could be avoided, or the attack could have been interrupted if the victim was paying attention. Now, some people call that victim shaming, and that's not what I'm saying. But if we get an education on awareness of our surroundings, awareness of the people around us, awareness of the environment that we're in, then maybe we can see danger coming from a farther way off, and that gives us time to make decisions that keep us safe. For example, if you're walking out of your office in the evening and you're aware of everybody in the parking lot, and you see a strange character across the parking lot because your head's not down looking at your phone, then you could say, hey, I've got time to go back in the office and lock the door and ask someone to pick me up, or ask the police to drive by, or gauge the distance to your car. And that's spatial awareness. If my car is right there, I can make my car start it up and get home safe, and not accusing that guy of being evil. But if it makes me uncomfortable, I should trust it and make decisions to keep myself safe. And that can be done without hurting him. Because what if I'm wrong and he's not a mugger? I don't need to hurt him to keep myself safe every time. So there's a balance there. If you make the preparations of awareness in that office setting or in that at work in your parking lot, you start to recognize a baseline. These are the cars that belong to my coworkers, and they're here every day, but I don't recognize that van, or I don't recognize that truck, or I don't recognize that person. If this is something that raises a flag, that's a good thing. It doesn't make me go to battle stations, but one flag is something you should pay attention to. Fear is a gift, like Gavin DeBecker writes, and it's your alarm system. It means something you act on. It doesn't mean shut down and quit.
Freeze, yeah.
Freeze. Sometimes freezing is the answer. Sometimes fighting is the answer. Sometimes fleeing is the answer. And the more aware you are, the more time you have to make the right decision.
Yeah, and you know, I've always noticed about police officers, I say they have eyes in the back of their head. I mean, because they're like, you know, really aware when they go out anywhere. And why is it that so many people are not aware? You do see people all the time on their phones, you know, completely disconnected from their surroundings. We're really putting ourselves at risk when we do that, right?
Right. With the advent of mobile communications devices like phones and emails, the innovation is amazing, but then in the business world, it turns into, I can reach you now. So my boss wants something now. My customers need something now. I can't take my eyes off my phone. So we feel like we have to be connected in this way, and we inadvertently disconnect with the world around us, and you will become easy targets.
Yeah, so would you say like the best thing to do is to walk to your car, lock the door, and then do what you need to do on your phone?
Right, exactly. If there's an old video when YouTube was new, there's a video of a man walking on a mobile device on one of the early smartphones, and he stepped right into a manhole in Chicago or some urban city.
I've seen stuff like that.
So
I've
the big
seen
manhole cover is gone, and that's not right, but somebody made a mistake. And then his mistake was not focusing, and he slipped right at I think he fell something like 30 feet, broke a couple of bones. That could have been avoided if he put his phone away. Sometimes we do get an important phone call. Sometimes there is a big project going on at the office. But if that's the case, stop, handle what you have to handle, or do it in the office before you go. I wouldn't walk through. We all have an idea of what a bad neighborhood is. I wouldn't walk through a bad neighborhood with my head down. But sometimes that becomes our defense, to curl up into a ball and hope that I don't get noticed. And that's not good. That's not healthy. It makes you more of a target.
And people that are out there to hurt you or to take advantage are opportunists, right?
Right. They can benefit from it.
They notice who
do.
is paying attention, who's not paying attention, right? Because there's a lot of crimes that are opportunity crimes. Would you say that?
Yes, yeah, there are a lot of times opportunity crimes. A lot of the times, if you think of a nice cars today, when you lock the door, the mirrors, bzzz, and they come in, and so the opportunists cruise your neighborhood at night, and they see that mirrors out means that car's unlocked, and if that car's unlocked, maybe they left something in the cup holder. So if they can get a couple of bucks, or designer sunglasses, or your wallet, or your iPhone, or God forbid your pistol, a purse, and if they hit 10 cars, they might get 10 bucks, 10 phones, 10 wallets, 10 handbags. And if they hit 5 streets, do the math. If they hit 2 neighborhoods, do that math. And it's a lucrative opportunity for criminals. It's a business world for them too. And some criminals are brilliant. They really come up with some amazing schemes. And if they turn their focus towards something lawful or something not criminal or something that didn't hurt you by taking your things, they could make a living.
They would be very successful.
Yeah, criminals aren't all dumb, but they could be very successful. We used to joke and say that you could go to Radio Shack and spend $12 and make a skimming device and put it on an ATM and steal credit card numbers, or put it on a gas pump and steal credit card numbers. That happened a lot in South Florida, and it kind of went away when the Radio Shacks went away, or when we started responding to it, when gas stations started doing better with security and stuff. And now when you put your credit card into an ATM or a gas pump, you'll see that it's a tap reader and not something that you put into, because those are easier to protect. But when technology makes us safer, the bad people's technology is another opportunity, and then it's cat and mouse.
Yeah.
It's just something we're constantly reacting to.
Yeah, it's incredible
It is.
how, they always like try to get a step ahead,
Right,
of what we're
exactly.
doing.
Right, and if that foils them, and the drug war, the drug smuggling, operations was just like that too. In the early '80s, there was a lot of marijuana and cocaine coming into Miami through the Caribbean. We focused our patrols there. They went to Mexico. We focused our patrols there. They go out to the Pacific Ocean. We respond to that. They come back to the islands. It's reaction. It's reactive. It's a reactive industry, for lack of a better term. So
Yeah,
yep.
makes sense. All right, we're going to thank you. I love this conversation. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. World Healing Tour 2 2024, October 20th, at the Wyndham Hotel in Boca Raton. We are looking for
This is where we put
vendors, for
sponsors and stuff in
sponsors,
too,
for
when they-
speakers. If you want to be a part of this, go to noahcrane.com or click the link below. And we are back with Martin. So, Martin, we're talking about being able to protect yourself
Yes.
in this crazy kind of world. I know we're in a more kind of a safer area, Boca Raton.
Sure.
Does a safer area like Boca, should you be less afraid in a safe area, or do you have to be just as aware? Because some people, I've heard people say like, oh, nothing happens around here, everything is good until something happens.
Right.
So I always say like, I don't think any place is really safe. Like, even if you live in the safest neighborhood and you think it's the safest neighborhood, you still have to protect yourself.
Right. In my experience, when you live in a safe neighborhood and your community is safe and your neighbors are good people, we tend to relax. And then maybe we leave things out, or maybe we don't lock the doors like we should. So that attracts a bad element, the bad actors. And we'll see a lot of people go across jurisdictions because, like, hey, I know about a neighborhood up north where they don't lock their cars and they don't lock their bikes, or they leave their kitchen door open and things like that. So that behavior attracts bad behavior. If you're always aware, if you're always prudent with your security measures, then it discourages it. Or if they come up here and try and they get no luck, it's like fishing. Somebody goes fishing and they don't get any fish, they'll go somewhere else. I don't think that we'll ever stop crime 100% because it's an opportunity for easy money with some people, but we can displace it, we can discourage it, we can scare them away, we can push them away, and there's a way of doing this. And sometimes they get caught. The ratio of police to citizens is a big disparity. There's 340 million people in this country, only 800,000 are cops. That's not a lot of people to spread out and cover every home, every corner, every intersection, every business. We have to help the police by spotting things and saying, that looks out of place, I'm going to call the police. Or that's missing, I'm going to call the police. That's community. That's working together. That's the partnership that good police departments like the Boca Raton Police Department encourages, so that we talk to one another and we help each other out. If we go strictly on the entertainment business like movies and television, we have a misunderstanding of violence and crime. So we think that it's just in the moment and maybe a quick karate move can save me. No, it's not that. It's years of training in karate that can make that move the best result in the moment. So it's doing like we do have to do the work for ourselves, do the work on ourselves to be good people, to be safe, and to be a harder target. We have to do more work on ourselves, and that's being aware every day and taking precautions. If you choose to arm yourself with a tool, you have to select the right one, practice with that tool, know the laws that govern your use of that tool so that you don't become a bad person. I'd hate to see a good person protect themselves but go too far and get arrested. That's what I don't want to see.
Yeah, and
that
I've
was
seen
another
that.
that was
I've
another
seen that.
purpose of my company.
Yeah, I love that. So how about gated communities? Like, some people live in gated communities. Is that a false sense of security?
It is sometimes. A gated sense of community is something that restricts vehicle traffic, but it doesn't. It's not a watertight, airtight, crime-free zone. So the gate discourages the vehicles that don't belong there. The security guards may discourage people that don't belong there. But what's going to really discourage them is the ones that go around the gate and duck the security and hop a wall. If they find everything locked and they find nothing, nothing to harvest here, they'll go somewhere else.
So how do you recommend that people protect themselves in their home? Would you say an alarm system? Would you say have a dog? What are some things that
Sure.
you say would help?
Any combination of the above, and everybody's lifestyle is going to dictate what they like in their lives. But I would say it's never a good idea to have unlocked doors. Even if you're home and it's during the day. I grew up with friends and family that wouldn't lock their doors until the last person was home in bed. And that's a loving, welcoming environment. But there's people in the world that are not loving and that you don't want to welcome into your home. So it's better to have all your kids have a key when they're old enough, when it's appropriate. Privacy is a big part of security. So close your blinds. You know, people walking by or driving by, casing your neighborhood, don't need to see that your children are home alone, cooking dinner for themselves because you have plans or because you have to work late or any of that stuff. We don't want to attract. We don't want to put out opportunities. We don't want to advertise opportunities. So locks is the first layer of defense. Lighting that's motion activated is something that could scare away an inexperienced criminal. And if it's only a percentage, I'll take it. You know, because in the aggregate, the lights, the locks, the discouraging, the dog, those are all things that in the aggregate, and I like that word because it makes me sound intelligent. In the aggregate, we scare away more criminals and discourage more criminal activity. So yes, lights, locks, alarms that are monitored especially. Now, sometimes it's an inconvenience if your alarm requires a permit with the city. Fine, it's worth it if it's protecting your family.
Yeah. And how about not opening your door to
Right.
people? Because I always been very strict about
yes,
that with my kids.
absolutely.
I'm like, do not open the door. I don't care who's outside the door.
Right.
You know, do not open the door.
There's a funny story with my parents. Occasionally, my parents had to work late or something, or somebody else was in a jam and they had to go help somebody out. And they would tell us when we were old enough, do not open the door to anyone. And my mother was frantic about something happening to her babies. And even when we weren't her babies, I'm 55 and I'm still her baby, right? So she would say, don't open the door to anybody. I don't care if your grandmother shows up. Do not open the door. Well, as luck would have it, one day my grandmother wanted to surprise us, and in the winter, she rode the train from Brooklyn to Queens and knocked on the door, and my older sister said, hi, Grandma, and she's like, hey, sweetie, open the door, it's cold out here. She's like, we love you, Grandma. Sure, that's really nice, open the door, let us in. I can't. Why not? Well, Mom said not to open the door to anyone, especially you. And that misunderstanding was awkward. And that, there was a while before there was peace between Mom and Grandma, so that we had to explain, that misunderstanding.
You took it literally.
Yeah, she did. We were like 12, so
Yeah.
my sister didn't mean it, but it hurt Grandma's feelings.
How long was Grandma outside for?
Well, after she said that, she turned around and she went home, and she was furious.
Oh my goodness.
She was furious, but you know what? We were safe. We can deal with the misunderstanding and the hurt feelings easily. We couldn't have been able to deal with a burglar coming in and hurting your kids. So yeah, don't open the door. I love the technology that allows you to use an intercom feature and talk to somebody at the door, because then the burglar doesn't even have to know that you're not home. Hey, now's not a good time. Come back later.
Oh, I've never seen those.
Yeah, like a Ring camera or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any money from the Ring camera.
They actually talk?
Yeah, there's an intercom at the front door.
Uh-huh.
So when they ring the doorbell, say somebody's selling Bibles or something,
Yeah.
and they bring on the door, you can answer the intercom and you can say, hey, now's not a good time, please come back later, even if you're not home. And if your doors are locked and you have an alarm and your blinds are closed, no one needs to know that you're not home. And places like the city of Boca Raton have it's against the rules to solicit door to door. That's salesmanship from another era. That's maybe it's not as productive, and it can be a nuisance to people. So they passed an ordinance that says in Boca Raton there's no soliciting. If you put a sign on your door, you can get them from the police department, and put a sign over your doorbell that says no soliciting. I've had people come up and the camera rings up and they see the sign and they don't bother ringing the bell and they go on to the next house.
Really?
And then that's great. That's an inconvenience.
How the malls, how safe or unsafe are malls?
Well,
Because there's a lot of people in malls, a
Sure.
lot of walking around, a lot of energy.
It is.
If people are not paying attention, is that a place where people follow people from, or not very likely?
A crowded place like a mall is semi-public, semi-private. It's a business the public is allowed into. So on the one hand, it's opportunity for criminals, pickpockets, car thieves, burglars. But on the other hand, the higher the traffic, the more natural surveillance we have. So you walk by my car when you park, and in the moment that it takes you to walk past my car, I know my car was safe. When I come out with my groceries or my shopping, when I walk past your car's safe. Multiply that by the thousands of people that go to the mall, then the mall is relatively safe. Not 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 watertight or airtight against crime. Excuse me. So so the answer is yes and no.
Is there a lot of crime in Boca Raton? I'm just curious.
I don't believe that there is. I mean, it's not like a more developed urban area. It's relatively quiet. It's relatively peaceful, and I credit the men and women of the Boca Raton Police Department.
That's awesome. Do you think a lot of crime happens within families themselves?
Yes, it does. The domestic violence is something that spiked during COVID. A lot of depression sets in, and a lot of that can motivate domestic violence. Sometimes a relationship doesn't work out. Sometimes a relationship is, in the bumpy stages. Sometimes people get out of hand, and there's a whole category of crimes of passion, of things that weren't planned. That's not like a bank robbery, and it can go too far and lead to some real tragedy. If we manage our stress, we can manage our fear, and we can manage, inappropriate behavior and be considerate of one another. Sometimes people marry too young. Sometimes people don't know how to parent. And if you take advantage of your resources, that's working on yourself, you can make sure that you're not doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's not easy, and
It's not.
especially when you bring kids into the mix,
It is.
and all kinds of chaos can happen in families.
Right, you're right. And you can talk to police and sheriffs all over the country. They can tell you that the families with drama that don't speak to one another, they get together at Thanksgiving and that tension goes up. Add alcohol, you could get a crime, you could get a little violence there. So it's something to be aware of. When we're old enough to realize I don't have to spend Christmas or Hanukkah with family members that I just don't get along with. That's guarding my own peace, and then that's a good thing. You don't want to be guilted into being uncomfortable, because then you put yourself in a harmful situation emotionally, and that's not what you want either. That ruins the holiday.
Yeah, for sure. So, is there some ways you teach people as well to be able to manage their stress?
Yeah, actually, there's one technique in breathing. A lot of when they're stressed, the body reacts the same way as it does when you're in fear, like in a violent encounter or an attack or something like that. So if you start feeling stressed, you can manage your breathing, and that's directly correlated to your heart rate. If you can lower your heart rate, you can think clearly and maybe solve a problem, maybe address what's stressing you. And if you're alone walking at night to your car, manage your stress so that you're not out of control, and you can coolly and calmly monitor your surroundings and recognize danger when you see it. Or a lot of our fear is in our mind. It is, again, I could walk out that door right now and get mugged, but chances are I'm not going to at 3 in the afternoon in downtown Boca Raton. Maybe downtown in another city, maybe. Maybe if it was darker out. A lot of crime comes from opportunity and environment. And if you're aware of your environment, maybe don't travel at certain times. Don't travel alone at certain times, and that manages stress as well. A lot of times, if we're prepared for safety, with safety in mind and crime prevention in mind, that manages our stress, our confidence, my ability to take care of myself, whether you're armed or not, kind of gives you a calm and peace to move through the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I want to ask you how unsafe it is to be out in the middle of the night, like, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. A lot of the young kids, including
Right.
my daughter, they literally wake up during those times. Those are the
Right.
times that they go out and they run around
And
and they
stay
do all
out and
kinds of
everything.
things. Yeah,
Sure,
it
sure.
makes me very nervous as a mom. And I was just wondering, what's your opinion on that? Like, I just think nothing good happens in the middle of the night.
Right. And my mother said that too. Nothing good happens after 11. So you need to be home by 11. But when I was 19, I didn't think that rule applied to me. And that's kind of part of growing up and rebelling against our parents and that stuff. If you're with a group of good people, then you're safer. And that's just like traveling overseas and stuff like that. If your daughter was out late with kids that you know and you trust, That's the kind of the beginning of a compromise with your daughter. I don't know how old she is, but it could be. We found that like part of parenting involves flexing your rules. So maybe your curfew is this much on weeknights, and your curfew is later on Saturdays. Maybe our deal is if there's no problems, we can extend your curfew. Or who will you be with? If you know who she's with and where she's going, if she's not afraid to check in, then your relationship with your daughter is going to keep that communication open, and that'll calm your stress, and she knows that she can call you. I did call my dad one time when I was 18 and said, "Dad, I'm at a party where I don't have a ride, and this isn't my crowd. I don't belong here. I'm stuck." And if we hadn't had the agreement and the relationship that you can call me and I'll come get you, um, then I might have stayed at that party and something bad might have happened. Or I might have thought, walk home by myself in the dark and you're an easy target, men or women.
And we've all made these really dumb decisions. We've all
We have,
done really silly things.
right,
Like in the moment, like we'll just say, "Oh, I'll just walk home at night," or "I'll
right.
just."
And
I
just
mean,
because something bad didn't happen
yeah.
doesn't mean you were right.
Yeah. So how important is it to like, because I'm sure those people that even make those decisions, there is some kind of an intuition. We were talking about
Sure.
like intuition. How important is it to be in the listening of your intuition? Because
Yes.
sometimes you just kind of like, oh, I'll be okay. I'll brush it off. I'm not gonna, even though my parents told me don't walk home by yourself at night, I'm gonna do it anyways.
Right. Sometimes we shame ourselves into doing something unwise because we don't want to look like a wuss. We don't want to look scared. So, yeah, you should trust your intuition. So, the time of night is a factor. It's not that it's all evil at night. You can have a drink with a friend if you're someplace safe and have a nice conversation, have a nice visit. It's not evil because it was after 11. But it, the time is a factor, the darkness is a factor, the neighborhood is a factor. Maybe how tired you are is a factor. If you had a long day, should you be out past midnight? No, you need your rest. How can you operate in peak performance if you're attacked, if you're out of gas, physically? So maybe it's time you listen. My father said one time, "Look, it's late. Come home. Make plans with your friends tomorrow."
Yeah, makes sense. But do you think criminals are more out at night? Are they more active at night from what you've seen as a police officer?
I think that depends on region. It depends on season. We found a lot of burglaries happen between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. because people are at work. So that's a time where burglars are out during the day,
And are
lunchtime,
are people usually not home at that time?
because they look for working class neighborhoods or neighborhoods where there's students and they assume nobody's home. The burglar doesn't want a fight. The burglar wants an easy spoils. So they
Yes.
want merchandise quickly and easily. So they don't want to fight. They don't want to run into you. So they're looking for places that you're not. So you couldn't say that nighttime is more dangerous. It depends on the place. It depends on the season.
And how common are break-ins? Like someone who breaks into your house in the middle of the night, and I mean, you've heard stories where people broke into their house, they
Sure.
tied them up, they all kinds of rapes and
Sure.
all kinds
Those
of things like that. Is that not common things that happen?
it's not as scarce as you would think. Something like a home invasion or something like that. Florida calls it like a home invasion robbery. What we found is that, and again, don't quote me on the exact statistics, but that might be something personal. That was somehow crime business related. So somebody breaking into your house and tying you up or tying up your family, you might owe them money, or they got the wrong house. Maybe your neighbor owes them money, or maybe somebody one street over and they made a mistake and they picked the wrong house. A lot of that, a lot of that is the setting in movies and television, and that's drama that we don't have to. I don't want to say don't worry about it, but it's not as likely. Um, a burglar's looking for an empty house, with empty of people, because all that stuff. So our awareness is, for example, after the holidays, you put out your boxes from the big gifts that you got. And if anybody can look in your trash and see you got a nice big new television, you're advertising that there's something valuable in your house. If your mail piles up, back when people had newspapers at home, if your newspaper's piled, that's a neon sign that says nobody's home. But if your neighbors keep an eye on your house while you're away and you return the favor when they travel, if you have good signage for your alarm company, then it's discouraging. We want to discourage the crime. So It happens. It does. It does certainly does happen. But I've found that in my experience, home invasion robberies were something personal, where the person maybe was involved in some bad business, or it was a mistake, maybe gang related, something like that. We don't see that a lot in Boca Raton.
All right, we're going to take another commercial break from our
Sure.
sponsors, and we'll be right back. The Grass Grows Where I Am, an incredible anthology book that we are bringing collaborators together. This book is about wisdom, resilience, empowerment, and enlightenment. Do you want to co author with us? If you do, go to noahcrank.com or click the link below. And we are back. Um, Fascinating conversation. So I wanted to ask you also one more thing before we go more into what you do.
Okay.
As far as like serial killers, because that always fascinates me.
It is. It
Is
is. It's fascinating. It is.
is that something that's out there to be feared?
Well, you could lump that into all the things that we fear, and a lot of the precautions are the same. Like you could say, for example, crime prevention is also terrorism prevention. Locking up, being aware of your surroundings. If it's time to arm yourself, it's time to arm yourself. Um, I'm not pushing firearms; they're not for everybody, but for the people that are conscious of tools that you can use to protect yourself. There's a safety involved. There's a training involved. There's a legal aspect to that, sure. But serial killers are out there. They are, and it's not just in this country. The psychology of it is fascinating. I read a book called "Whosoever Fights Monsters" by Robert Ressler, I think it was, and he did a study of the FBI agents that studied serial killers, and what they have in common is fascinating. A lot of them didn't have a father between the age of like 4 and 9, and that's when, in the Western culture, an American child learns respect from a male role model, and without that father figure there, they didn't learn respect, and that's a boundary to violence. Without respect, a stable mentally healthy person isn't going to randomly hurt somebody else. But if they weren't taught respect, they weren't taught physical boundaries, keep your hands to yourself, respect a lady, things like that. And that's kind of old fashioned. But the psychology of the serial killer is interesting, but it's also popular in entertainment, and it could give us a false sense of they're around every corner. So I wouldn't say that. If you're safe from a burglar, you're safe from a serial killer. So I hope that's an answer. That's a good answer, right?
Yeah. So what you're saying in a lot of ways is the most important thing is for us to be super aware, to use things to be able to protect ourselves,
Mhm.
and to just, listen to our intuition
Right.
and, just don't take chances,
Right. I would think of your personal safety as in layers. So the hardware is a layer, the locks, the cameras, the alarms, the automatic lights, that's hardware. That's a layer. Your intuition is another layer. And your intuition can be refined and honed and improved by educating yourself on crime stats in your community and just understanding awareness, understanding the tools. Sometimes a weapon is a layer of defense. Sometimes a physical skill is a layer of defense. But paying attention to what's going on around you is not super hyper aware all the time, because that's fatiguing. We can't do that. If you're calmly aware, and then you raise your awareness when a flag goes up, one flag, two flags, the time of day, where I am. You can be hyper aware in the moment and then come back to cruising speed. So not super aware, because we can't do that around the clock, but a calmly aware.
not to let it stress you out.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's mentally fatiguing to be in combat, but like think about soldiers in combat. Their awareness and their stress level is up here, but if they're just patrolling and not in combat, it's a lot lower. And what they see, the stimulus, is the reaction that drives what mental readiness state we're in. There's a lot of schooling on that I picked up on in order to be a good instructor, in order to do well and stay alive for 34 years, but to turn around and share those lessons. It's interesting. The psychology is interesting. The physiology of it is interesting.
Yeah, so I love that you're a trainer,
Thank you.
and I love that you teach people how to stay safe.
Cool.
And I want to learn more about what you do and how you help people
Yeah.
stay safe. What are we going to learn when we come to your class? What are some of the tools you're going to give us how are we going to be better protected in the world because we spent that time with you?
Sure. When we reach a certain age, we're responsible for our own well being, for our own nutrition, for our own fitness, our own clothes, our own day to day activities. And self defense is part of that. And not to make you paranoid again, of course. When I was new in the United States Coast Guard in the law enforcement training, there was one or two instructors that went above and beyond, that gave of themselves they were amazing instructors. Anyone can read a book to a crowd of people and say, good, you learned it. Anybody can mimic physical moves and say, do what I do there, I trained you. That's not it. There's an art and a science to teaching. And when you get above a certain age, you learn differently. When we're children in kindergarten, they line us up in rows and columns, and we're sponges. Children are The mind of a child is amazing, and how it picks up. Look at how quickly our children learn another language or learn another culture. It's remarkable. When you get past adolescence, you learn differently. You may be prejudiced by your experiences and you resist learning. So, adult learning theory was huge for instruction in the military and in law enforcement and in a lot of other professions. So, I had to learn what's going to resonate with you in my class. So sometimes it's humor, sometimes it's fear, sometimes, hey, listen, I don't want you to die, so don't do X, Y, Z. And maybe that caught your attention, or I made you laugh, and maybe after lunch you weren't sleepy in my class. Or sometimes some people are fascinated by the trivia. Here's something funny I saw on the internet lately. In the prospecting days out in the Old West in this country, the gold miners would come down into the towns with no money, but they wanted a hit of whiskey, but they had no money. The bartenders would allow you a serving of whiskey if you gave him a bullet. And that's why today a serving of whiskey is called a shot.
Wow.
So that's
I didn't know
it's kind of neat. Firearms go back into our history, and that barter exchange there doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. But then the bartender has the ammunition that he needs, and that kind of met an economic need for him. For him there, that nerdy little bit of history kind of helps me engage students and keep them interested in my class.
I love that. So when we come to class, what's the first thing you're going to teach us?
First thing I'm going to teach you is the mechanical safety, like the home defense, things like that. And then after a break, I talk about awareness, and that's the intuition. Building good intuition is being mindful and being aware of where you are. So we use the phrase situational awareness a lot, but that's only one flavor of it. Right now, the situation is that I'm a guest on your podcast, and there's a very talented technician over there helping us out. Situation is people. Environment is the rug, the floor, the lighting, the curtains, the locks, and the neighborhood, and maybe the time of year. Spatial awareness is the distance to your car if you have an emergency, the distance to a fire extinguisher if he has an emergency. So all different kinds of awareness, and that's what we talk about in class. And when we get into physical techniques of whether you're arming yourself with a skill or with a tool, we talk about what's safe with that skill, so you don't injure somebody unnecessarily. We talk about what's safe with that tool, so I don't injure myself unnecessarily, and what's legal with that tool. Like I said, there's self-defense is stated clearly in Florida law. If you go to Texas, the wording might be different. Go to New York, the wording might be different. So what's safe, what's legal, and what's reasonable. In an emergency, I'm going to teach you decision making, like a formula, for lack of a better term. So if I teach you how to respond to what you see, I'm not going to tell you when you can shoot somebody. I'm not going to tell you when you can punch somebody in the nose. I'm going to teach you to make those decisions for yourself. No good instructor is going to prepare you for the infinite possibility of scenarios. And if they say they can, they're selling you a load of goods. It's best to learn what's safe, what's legal, and what's reasonable. And that's how good people stay out of trouble and keep themselves safe, or their loved ones as well.
Do you teach some self-defense techniques?
I do teach some self-defense techniques, but I'm insured now as a business, so I need to limit to what I have a certification for. So I can teach awareness and theory. I can teach firearms. I can teach pepper spray. I can teach batons. I'm working on a certification for stun guns. I can teach the pros and cons of all those, but I don't have a black belt in karate, so my insurance company's not going to cover a karate class. Plus, it would be disingenuous for me to misrepresent myself. There's tons of martial arts schools in Boca Raton. Why compete with them? I think I would refer you to any of them because you want to learn from different masters. And that's really a good philosophy in anything in life. Learn from different masters. You don't want to just learn from me. You want to learn from him. You want to learn from somebody else and make up your own style.
How important is it to carry a weapon with you when you're out and about?
Carrying a weapon is a personal decision.
And that doesn't, and I mean even a gun, I'm talking about a stun gun.
Of course.
Is it important to have something? Like my friend carries number 2 pencils with her.
Got it.
She literally,
Sure.
she's a feisty one. She has
A pencil can be a tool.
2 number 2 pencils with her, really, sharp well.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are things that you can do. The things that you can do, but self-defense is best when it's something you can do naturally. So if she doesn't know what she's going to do with number 2 pencils, then she's not truly ready. So a weapon can't be simply a security blanket that I have in my pocket that makes me feel better. A weapon or a tool or a skill has to be something that's repeatable under stress. That I know what the rules are. I know how to apply the rules to that weapon. So if she stabs somebody with a pencil, was it really the reasonable thing to do? She could get herself in trouble. I would tell her, come to my class.
She knows what she does.
Good. No, that's very good. And you know what? Anything can be a tool. And when we talk about active shooter defense in a workplace, the run, hide, fight philosophy, so a lot of people kind of turn their noses up at it, but it's a good start. It's a good foundation. If you have to hide and find that a killer is approaching you in an active shooter situation, God forbid in a school or in an office place, you have to look around the room and arm yourself with an or normal object. So maybe a keyboard, maybe a chair, maybe a trash can, maybe a fire extinguisher. But if you don't think about what you would do with those things in advance, you won't come up with an amazing idea in the moment. So that mindfulness about your environment is also, what can I use to protect myself? That chair, that fire extinguisher, this number 2 pencil. Sure, how? And ask yourself how, and then answer that question. That's true preparation.
Yeah. So, when you go out and about, would you say a woman should maybe carry a stun gun with her if she knows how to use it properly, right?
With the caveat of training with it and understanding when it's appropriate, then yes, of course. And her confidence of knowing that she has a tool to protect herself and the ability to use it, that confidence puts out an energy of, I'm ready.
Don't mess with me.
Don't mess with me. And that turn off, sometimes the criminal responds to that energy and says, not her. Not her. Look for somebody else. And if that saves her and she didn't have to zap them, I'll take it. Again, in the aggregate, it's a crime prevention.
But you shouldn't have your zapper, if you're going out to your car, your zapper shouldn't be in your purse. Like you should actually probably have it ready in your hand, would you say?
It could be.
You want to be ready, right? You don't want to have to open your purse, look for it. I
Right.
mean,
If it's 5 steps
Yeah.
away, it's not ready right now. Violence happens that quickly. In the movies and television, it's slowed down so that you see the excitement and you understand the heroism for the story. In the real world, violence is very quick, so you want to be ready. So does that mean absolutely have it in your hand outside of your purse? Not necessarily. If it's in your hand in the purse, as long as you've practiced that and you won't fumble it or snag it in your purse or grab your hairbrush instead, it's practice, and then that's a good
And would
thing.
you say you should practice it on a regular basis, like at home, or how do you
Yes.
practice those kinds of things?
Yeah, so if you had the power off on an energy weapon like a stun gun, I would stand in front of a mirror and see where you carry it, whether it's your purse or your pocket, and do it slowly so that you see, oh, I got caught on the zipper, or it got caught on this flap, or it got caught on this buckle, or hey, this purse, no good for a stun gun. Work those details out in front of a bedroom mirror without zapping your dog or your cat, because that's animal cruelty. And then that's true preparation. So yes, yeah. I wouldn't use a stun gun in a gas station because the fumes could ignite the fuel. You have a big kaboom. That's not what you want. That
Yeah.
puts you in danger. So it's aware of your environment as well.
But what if somebody attacks you in a gas station? You don't do it by the gas, you just do it to the person.
Well, there's fumes all around there,
Oh,
and they ignite.
oh okay,
So
okay.
maybe the stun gun is not the tool for the gas station. Maybe a baton is. Maybe that's where martial arts are more appropriate. Maybe that's where a firearm is more appropriate. But the flash of a firearm, could a flash of a firearm uh, ignite fumes? Maybe. But here's something else I say about gas stations. We park our car, we walk around. Sometimes we fail when we don't lock our doors. That's a fail. Lock your doors when you get in gas. You go around to the gas pump, you choose your payment method, put your card away, take the nozzle, select your grade, put it in the car, and a lot of us look at the numbers and think about how much this is costing me, and we growl about who's in the White House. You've lost your environment. Put it in, snap it, it's pumping, and step away from it and pay attention to your environment. That's safe. Because again, if I'm aware, if I'm alert, if I exude that confident energy, that's a layer of defense as well. Guaranteed? No, no guaranteed. But then somebody might think, hey, she is too aware for me to sneak up on her and get into her car or come up and grab you or something like that. So good point about the gas station. That's not necessarily the that tool. It's our awareness or another tool.
Yeah, I definitely believe that the awareness is just so super important to our survival on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's the baseline for everything. It totally is. There was a child who up north in another state, and this is out of one of the masters that I study from. A child walking home from school in the wintertime saw a neighbor with the garage open, and he saw a little brown shape by the wheel of this old woman's car. He assumed it was a dog, and he went home and he told mom, hey mom, and she says, hey, how was school? Good, everything. And she gets him ready with a bowl of soup, and she's going to welcome her child home after school. What's new today? And he says, nothing. Mrs. Green got a new dog. And she says, what? Yeah, he's in her garage. There's a dog by her car. And mom thinks, Mrs. Green's in her 70s. There's no way she got a dog. She can't take care of a dog. It would be too much for her. What are you talking about? Well, her garage is open, and it looks like there's a dog by the tire. Mom could have blown that off, but she said, you know what, show me. And they got their coats, and he took her back to Mrs. Green's house. Mrs. Green had put on a fur coat to go out and get the newspaper, and she slipped in the garage. She hit her head on the bumper and knocked herself out. What the boy saw was the coat under the car, and if he had mentioned it to his mom, if mom hadn't taken it seriously, if mom's intuition was, let's investigate what you're talking about, they saved her life. They got her an ambulance, and she's okay today. But if he was looking at his shoes, he would have never seen the garage open. If mom was too busy with something else or on her phone, she wouldn't have been listening that he remarked something. So the baseline of our community is the result of awareness. We pick up on the baseline. What's normal? What's above normal or below normal? What's out of place or what's missing? And that's what we're looking for. Awareness isn't just looking. Awareness is seeing and processing and interpreting and asking yourself questions. That doesn't belong there. Why? I'm not saying Scooby and the gang go and investigate everything. Sometimes you stay home, lock the door, call the cops, let the professionals check it out. And that's something we fail to do sometimes too. I'm embarrassed. I didn't want to bother the police. Call them. If something bothers you, it would bother the police. Call them.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you said is that it's important to, even in your own neighborhood, to have your neighbors kind of
Right.
all together watching each other's space, watching each other's
Right,
house.
and
you
that's
share
community.
Yeah.
That's helping one another out.
Yes.
That's really good. When I moved into my neighborhood, I introduced myself to the neighbor across the street, the neighbor next to him, the neighbor on the other side, the neighbors on both sides of me, and the neighbor on the other side of the fence. The others, that's like 6 neighbors. So number one, that's building community. But I said, hey, if you ever see anything weird in the community, let me know. I'm a police officer. I'll check it out. And they were grateful for that. Maybe the foot in the door to neighborhood was that I was in uniform. So maybe they were at peace with that. I wasn't threatening. I wasn't just a weird chubby Spanish guy going, "Hey, keep an eye on my house for me," you know. But once we got to know each other and be truly neighbors, we do call each other. and say, hey, there's a car in your driveway. Oh, you know what? My dad's in town. Oh, thanks very much for noticing. That's a good neighbor.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. Or sometimes realtors go up and down the street and they take pictures of houses. That's not evil. But sometimes it's burglars. So if we don't know if we don't check,
Right.
and
It's
we can
important
call.
to check.
Yeah, if this car's circled your block 4 times, that's not a realtor.
Yes.
I would think.
Right.
I would think it's not. That's worth a phone call.
Yeah,
That's worth
definitely.
having somebody check it out.
So, Martin, how can people find you, connect with you, and learn from you?
Oh, I appreciate that. My website is www.umtc-instructor.com. And all my social media, my telephone number and email springs off of that. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll take a phone call from anybody if they got a quick question. But it's UMTC. My company is Uncle Marty Training and Consulting. So it's umtc-instructor.com, and you can get a hold of me anytime.
Great. And the name of your company is?
My name of the company is UMTC.
And you said Scared Prepare.
Oh, my seminar coming
Yes.
up in June 30th is Scared to Prepared. If you'd like to come to Scared to Prepared, it's an afternoon of self-defense awareness. It's not a shooting class. It's an awareness class. We'd love to have you join us for snacks and drinks and a little bit of learning together.
And how long is the class?
The class is noon to 5. It's four quick talks with breaks, and
Okay.
I'm a big fan of snacks. So
That's
snacks and a little bit of alcohol.
Okay, sounds amazing. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today on the World Healing Tour podcast. I
you.
really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you all for joining us today on the World Healing Tour podcast. Until next time, remember to have a grateful heart, to ground in love and compassion, and know every day that you're not alone, but rather you are guided by God. Check out my 3G jewelry collection at noahcrane.com. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Namaste.
Very nice.
The World Healing Tour movement with your host, Noah Crane. Heal yourself, heal the world.